I want to thank you for today, and especially offering up these quilts in preparation for a sermon. In case it gets boring, you now have a way to wrap up and curl up on the pews. That's good. That's good. Happy for that. In addition to this, I'm going to set this basket here, but I'm also going to put this basket here as well. And as you know, the hurricane relief needs to continue on, and I would ask that you give to that as well. I talked to a guy by the name of Stan. He's pastor at Messiah Lutheran in Panama City. And first of all, our conversation was cut off about 3 or 4 times. We ended up having to call each other back because he was on a cell phone, and I'm going to guess that most of the towers are still repairing. And so cell phone service was spotty, but basically what I got from him is that it's a mess in Panama City. It's a horrid mess on Mexico Beach. And there are lots of people who have lost their homes completely, lost their cars completely, and because it is an economy based on tourism, have lost their jobs completely. This is going to be a big change, and the more that we can express our gifts by helping them out, the better for them, and really the better for us. It connects us with people who are in need, and that's exactly what Jesus wants from us. Also, one other thing, while we're doing announcements here. A week from Wednesday is Beggar's Night. It happens to be Halloween Eve, or Halloween night, and so that's the night that the kids are going to all get dressed up and go on out, which means that we will have church here on Wednesday night. But what we're going to do a little different, so those of you, especially those of you that have children in our education program, come at 5 o'clock, eat a meal. We're going to send you out at about 5:45, 5:45, go on out in this neighborhood. We'll have to let the neighborhood know that we're going to we're just going to overrun them. And do your trick-or-treating in this neighborhood. I have heard that this is one of the best neighborhoods to trick-or-treat in, actually. Is this true? Anybody know? Yeah, someone's shaking their head. Yes, it is. Then come back at 7, and we'll have worship service, and then we're going to talk about the true meaning of Halloween. All right? So that's a week from this Wednesday. Keep coming on Wednesdays no matter what. Unless you know ahead of time, we're doing something, and it's always going to be good, and it's always going to be edifying for your children. So today we're talking about prayer, and let's begin just simply by bowing our heads. Our Father, who art in heaven, say it with me, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses. These are those but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So I want to start today with a question. Let me get there first. Those words that you just said, they're not our own. They're given to us by someone else. We say them all the time, over and over and over again. Since probably a time you can't remember, many of you have been saying these words. So much so that we just buzz right over them. They're rote. I'm just wondering, when was the last time you actually thought about that prayer? I can't remember when I did, but we say it over and over and over again, right? And yet it occurs to me that every time there is a desperate or joyful time in your life, there are those words. You find your way to my study because you're facing something so large that you don't know what to do with it. And there are those words. I walk into a hospital room and you are in tears. And there are those words. I meet you at the funeral home where you have just experienced an important loss. And there are those words. You've gotten good news on a test. and there are those words. You've gotten bad news on a test, and there are those words. They're not our own. They came from someplace else. We have them memorized tens of thousands of times in a lifetime. You will probably say these words. So much so that we don't even think about them. And so I guess I'm wondering why. Why do we pull those words out in those times in our lives? Why, when we say them, do they bring us joy, solace, peace, and hope? Let's sing. So lately I've been having fun watching my grandchildren, and especially the way they talk to the people they know care about them, their parents and their grandparents. So I will walk in the door at Kareen's place, and Tess will pipe up and say, "Papa, I'm wearing my purple shirt." And it's like it's nonstop. It's just the motor never quits. And it is everything. It's from what they're wearing to what they did in school, to the good things that happened to them, to the trouble they just got in. I was just in the corner. I hear that one. You know, the toy, little Jack brings this toy and he shows me how it works, and especially the toilet training successes and failures. And it's all there, and it's nonstop, and it just keeps coming at you. I just find that so interesting. So much so that we start to tune out, right? I remember one time when I was raising my own, Christian, he was kind of doing the motor mouth thing like I'm talking about, and pretty soon he noticed that I barely had one ear on him. So he took his hand, put him on my face, and went like this. And he's, "Dad, I'm talking to you." And he kept it coming, and he just kept it coming. And you know, I got to thinking about that, and it's so important to the child, everything you say. But contrary to what the child thinks, it's not so much about all these millions of little things they're talking about. It's about the relationship that happens as you talk about all these millions of little things. And it's almost like the child, it's almost like a child is tying together a string hammock. And every little thing, he ties another knot, and ties another knot. He tells you about what he's wearing, ties another knot. He tells about how he ties another knot. And pretty soon, he has this hammock. He or she they have this hammock into which they can throw the whole weight of their life onto that hammock called a relationship with their mom or their dad or their papa or their grandma. So we've been talking for the last several weeks about the good bones, about the foundations of the faith. And last week we talked about the creed. This week we're talking about prayer. And if The creed is really what goes on in the head. The prayer is really what goes on in the heart. God commands us to pray. He says you must pray. And he doesn't do it because God needs us to pray. He does that because he knows that we need that relationship. Bring everything. Wear my ears out, God says. Take your hands, put them on my face, and turn towards me so that I will hear everything you say. Don't worry about me getting tired of it. Keep bringing it. Why? Because with every little thing you bring to God, tie together another string, tie together another string, tie together another string, until finally what you have is a hammock, a relationship into which you can take your entire life and rest it in the grace and love of the Father. Let's sing. So recently, actually not recently, it was many years ago. I keep running into it though. Did any of you ever listen to TED Talks? If you've never done that, just go in and Google TED, and you will find literally thousands of 20-minute talks about a variety of topics. And I found one. This was many years ago now, but like I said, it popped up again this last 2 weeks by a physician. His name is Abraham Verghese. And he talks about the physician's touch. He talks about the importance of the physical exam where the doctor actually lays hands upon you and listens to your heart, takes your pulse, percusses your chest, picks up the eyelid, looks at you, touches you. And Dr. Verghese talks about this as being the way that the doctor-patient relationship is sealed. There's an intimacy there. I mean, you take off your clothes for someone, and that person touches you in ways that no one else is allowed to touch you. And pretty soon you find yourself telling that doctor things you wouldn't tell anybody else. At the end of his talk, he tells the story about one of his patients. He's an infectious disease doctor, and it was an HIV patient in the early days of HIV when people would just waste away to nothing. And he had this one patient in particular that he remembers. And there's a sense of futility in all of that because you know where this is going to go. But every day, Dr. Verghese would go into the room, and every day he would do this exam. And it was the last day they would do this. This patient only had a few hours left. And he was skin and bones. And he could no longer speak. They both knew what was going to happen. And the doctor walks in. And this patient, with his stick-like fingers, he can't speak, reaches up and starts fumbling with the buttons on his pajamas. And pretty soon gets them all open and exposes his wicker basket chest. And the doctor began to percuss and listen and feel his abdomen. And both of them knew this was not about listening for the signs of heart failure or fluid in the lungs. It was about something bigger than that. It was about a relationship that began long ago between the two of them, and about the way that relationship would carry both of them through until this man breathed his last. Say it with me. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. This day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Those words are not our own. If we've said them once, we've said them thousands upon thousands of times. They are rote, they are memorized. We don't even think about them. But they are a sign of something larger. And every time we say them, whether it's here in church or in my study or at the hospital or going into the funeral home, every time we say them, what we do is unbutton the buttons and expose our wicker basket lives. And we give everything to him, who then turns around and he tells us, I will never leave you alone. I will never abandon you. You will always be mine. Amen.